Okay, we're holding on the third page of the Maamar, page 201. We were explaining about the Yafa Sichasan Shal Avdei Avis versus Toirasan Shal Banim, how it is greater and the talk of the Avdei Avis, the speech of the Avdei Avis.
Recording in progress.
And specifically, we use the word speech. Why do we use the word sicha instead of dibur or some other thing? Because we're talking here about davening. And davening is a state of bittul as a prerequisite for Torah. So even though Torah has in it very great milas and is in many ways higher than tefillah, but still in all, to be able to reach the true level of what Torah is about, it's necessary for the person to have the sicha beforehand, needs to have the bittul of davening. And we also emphasize that's the idea of avdei. Eved is the idea that he's not a metzias for himself, and the level of avis, we said ha'avis hein hamarkava, the forefathers are considered the chariot, they're completely batal to Hashem. So all of these things are yafim mitoirasin shalbonim, are more beautiful than the Torah of the children, because this is what enables us to the ultimate state of bittul. Through the bittul that we have by davening, then we could reach the great heights of learning, that learning has these qualities higher than davening. So we're holding on, again, like I said, the third page of the Maamar, page 201, the second paragraph. You said this idea of this bittul will be understood from the advantage and quality of this, the first parsha of Krishma over the second parsha of Krishma. The Hinu parsha Shnia Dorsh Razal, and the second parsha the Chazal said that why does it say V'haya im shamoya tishmu? Why doesn't it just say V'haya im tishmu? There will be when you listen. So then v'nasatik ishmechem b'itam, etc., etc. What's this double expression V'haya im shamoya tishmu? So the Chazal say im shamoya b'yashon, if you will listen to the old, tishmu b'chadash, you will listen to the new. I'm not going into explaining what exactly is referring to over there about yashon and chadash, but primarily the point that the Rebbe wants to bring out from this is that we're not really referring to anything new. It's all the same thing that's being like repeated and so on. In the second parsha of Krishma, there is nothing new. And newness that Rebbe associates is inyan habligvul, has to do with going out of one's boundaries. When one leaves boundaries behind, or one breaks through boundaries, beruchnius, that is new. But seder ishtalshlus, the level of gvul, that is not new. So v'hoyim shemayam is a level that is still within Hagabala, still limited. Aval parsha Rishoyna namar gam b'chol moedecha. Also, but in parsha Rishoyna it says also with all your might. Shu inyan hamesiris nefesh. It's the level of self-sacrifice, but not self-sacrifice as in b'chol nafshcha also means self-sacrifice that he's willing to give up his life. But mesiris nefesh means over here totally going above and beyond himself, like we've always spoken about. We spoke about this previously, not too long ago about b'chol moedecha. Me'oid means very over the top. Okay, Pirish Razal, like the Chazal also explained, b'chol moedecha means b'chol midah shu moedelach. In every measure, what's the meaning of b'chol moedecha? That every measure that he measures to you, so you will do the same type of way. So the Rebbe says, let's skip the parentheses. Shebachdei lahagia lazehu dafka idei inyan hakabolas olam mesiras nefesh. How does a person like mimic Hashem, copy Hashem? That's only through accepting the yoke of heaven, through the idea of complete self-sacrifice, complete devotion. The kivan she'einu metzias la'atzmoi, because since he is not an entity for himself. He's not a separate person for himself. Ein nafkamina etzloi. There's no difference by the person. Be'eza oifen moedim loi. In what type of way are things being measured out to him? So in other words, by a person that's limited, he says, this I can do, that I can't do. But if he has no limitations in his service, if he's completely devoted to Hashem, complete Kabbalah soil, so whatever Hashem does, so that's the way that he responds. Or a different way, or that is what he accepts from Hashem without judgment and without consideration, how come and why come and why and so on and so forth. This is also the reason why the first parsha of Krishma is called, that they make the will of the Creator. Like the Mizritcher Magid explains, that why are they, first of all, even in the simple sense, why are they truly considered fulfilling the will of the Creator? It's not just because in the latter half of V'hoyim Shemoya it speaks about when Yidden don't listen, but even the beginning, since it doesn't say B'chol Moedecha, it's not truly batal to Hashem, there's no true devotion to Hashem's will. As opposed to the first parsha, Shizel Lefi Shabon Namar B'chol Moedecha, and the first parsha, Krishma says, with all your ma'oid, meaning going out of your limitations and boundaries, and therefore you're truly doing the will of the Creator. And more so, like we also spoke in the previous Maamar, or to Maamar, last week's Maamar, this is also included the meaning that they are making the will of the Creator, not that they fulfill the will of the Creator. Shepoilim, they affect memacht oif, they create ritzoyne shel makim, the will of Hashem. Shepoilim ratzon chadash l'mayla, they affect and create a new will above. Varezeu inyan tefillah. That is the same idea of tefillah. The entire purpose of this paragraph is to explain the special importance of tefillah and davening over and before Torah, Yafas Yichothen Shalav Diavas. So the same idea of tefillah is to create lifal ratzon chadash, to make a new will by Hashem. We always say in davening it should be the will before you. In other words, even though you might have had a will contrary to this now we want to create by Hashem a new will. If a person chas v'sholom was unwell, now we want to make a new will that he should be well. That is the greatness and the greater beauty, and how much more beautiful the sicha of the servants of the Avos are from the Torah of the children, mitzad mailas hatfil ala Torah, because the advantage of davening over Torah, which is similar to the advantage and the greatness of the first parsha of Krishma over the second parsha of Krishma. Only through davening. The idea of davening is accepting the yoke of heaven and self-sacrifice. We affect and we create a new will above by Hashem. So now the Rebbe is going to counter that. Seemingly, you're telling me that the first parsha is about the advantage, like tefillah is over Torah. But if you look at the first parsha is also talking about Torah. We still need to understand that the Krishma Namra Gam Miles Torah. In the first parsha of Krishma, it also speaks about the advantage of Torah. Like it says, you shall speak in them. Chazal said, what is the them that you shall speak about? It's talking about the words of Torah. So we see that even in the first parsha of Krishma, which we say the first parsha of Krishma is so great, it's Mesiras Nefesh, it's Eisen Ritzayin Shel Makim, it also speaks about Torah. And also, V'gam b'Maamar Azal Yafas Yichothen Shel Chulu Gufa Roim Anu Ma'as HaTorah. Even from what we said, this initial Maamar Chazal says, it is more beautiful, the Sicha, than the Torah of the children. That itself indicates the advantage of Torah. Why? Didn't we say Sicha is Tefillah? Correct. Sicha is tefillah, but how do you derive that Sicha is greater? You derive it from the Torah. Shareya Inyan, the idea that it's more beautiful. The Sicha of the servants of the forefathers is the fish of Parshas Shal Yezer Ibeis v'Gimel Dafim b'Torah, because the Parsha about Eliezer and Rivka takes up 2 and 3 pages, columns in the Torah. From this we see that the main thing is the advantage of Torah, because it's only because Torah is so special. Give a look how special it is, that we value how much words and how many pages are in Torah, and because it's so many pages in Torah, that's why we're saying the Sicha is so great. So that means Torah must be great, and great enough to be able to inform us about how great davening is. So from the where you're deriving the advantage and quality of davening is the very same place where you know that the main thing is the advantage of Torah. This is not similar to what's explained concerning tshuva. Chassidus always brings down that tshuva is greater than Torah. How do we see it? Top of the 4th page. Therefore, tshuva has the capability to fill any defect and blemish that occurred in Torah. In other words, if a person didn't fulfill the Torah, didn't follow Torah, didn't do mitzvahs, so then tshuva can repair it. So that shows that tshuva must be higher than Torah, that tshuva can repair and fix up and fill in what Torah was lessened in and mitzvahs were lessened in through a person's doing what they weren't supposed to do. And Mikol Malkim, despite the fact that tshuva is greater than Torah, Gili in Yanat Tshuva, why Torah, the revelation of tshuva is through Torah. How do we know about tshuva? Who tells us about the power of tshuva? Who even tells us the details of how one must perform tshuva? So it's in Torah. So you could say the same thing about Yafas Sichasan Shalav de Yavas. Even though, how do I know that the Sicha of the Avdei Avos is so beautiful and so great and so important? How do I know that Tefillah is so great? I know it because of the Torah devoting 2-3 pages to Sicha. So therefore I know Tefillah is greater. So it's because Torah is revealing it to us. Just like Torah is revealing to us the greatness of tshuva, the same thing Torah is revealing to us the greatness of Sicha, the greatness of Tefillah. So the Rebbe says, don't compare the two. The idea that even though tshuva is higher than Torah, Torah is the one that reveals it to us, is not in the same way of the relationship of Sicha, Tefillah with Torah in our parsha. So he says in the second line, Tshuva was only revealed through Torah. Torah is the one that tells you that Tshuva is so great. But Tshuva itself is higher than Torah. As opposed to the greatness of the Sicha, of the davening, over Torah learning, it's not just something that was revealed in the Torah. Torah tells you by tshuva, you need to do tshuva. And we derive on our own, if tshuva can repair what Torah itself got broken by the person, so tshuva must be higher. But here, it's not just that Torah is telling you that tefillah is great, but rather, what? How do I know that Sicha is so great? How do I know that davening is so great? Because 2 and 3 pages are devoted in Torah. That means that Torah is already giving itself the backhanded compliment by saying Torah values tefillah so much because Torah spends so much time on it. So that the fact is that you're telling me that Torah is so important while you're doing that. Whereas when Torah just informs you about tshuva, all it's doing is it's informing you about tshuva. It's not telling you anything that Torah is great. Another thing that we see about how the greatness of Torah is inherent in this whole expression of Chazal, and the advantage of Torah is also emphasizing the fact the advantage of Torah is emphasized by the fact that which particular story do we see the advantage of Sicha? It's a story of relating the mission that Eliezer had concerning the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka. Could have been another story in the Torah that the Torah could have informed you about how Sicha is greater. But specifically, it happens to be the story of Yitzchak and Rivka. So you're going to say, well, it just happened to be, that was the story that was going on. He says, all matters in Torah are completely and totally exact. So if we're deriving it from the story of the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, so we know that the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka have to do actually with Torah. The idea that Yitzchak and Rivka represents is the idea of Torah. As it's known, the Rebbe brings from Kuti Torah, from the Alter Rebbe, Yitzchak in Yoni Torah Shabbat. Yitzchak represents the written Torah. The Rivka in Yoni Torah Shabbat, Rivka is the oral Torah. Where do we see Rivka's association with that? She went down to the spring or to the well, and she filled her pitcher. And the Chazal explain Kada, her Kad, Hainu Chav Dalet Svarim Da'iraisa. Kad, the name for a pitcher in Lashon Kodesh. So the Chazal say, the Medrash says, or it's actually in Kabbalah it says that it's the 24 Svarim of Tanakh. Shemehem nimsheches Torah Sheba'al Peh, that from that comes out the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So she's dipping in her Kad to derive and elevate and bring out the Torah Sheba'al Peh. So therefore, v'nisui Yitzchak v'Rivka, and the marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka, hu inyan yichud Torah shebeksav Torah Sheba'al Peh, it's the union of the written Torah and the oral Torah. So it's also understood that the main thing is, again, the advantage of Torah, the quality of Torah. That's why it's telling you the story of Eliezer and teaching you this whole idea about the Yafas Yichasan, the greatness of davening, by the story of the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, the union of Torah Shebeksav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. To note, also that's brought down in the Maamar into the Torah. The order of the avodah is in such a manner in the order of Tishrei, which is the head of the year, which is the month of the year that represents the entire avodah vayid. What do we start off with? We start off with the days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is primarily days that are devoted to davening. Yes, there are other aspects and components to it, but it's primarily about davening. At the conclusion of the Yom Tovim of Tishrei, we come to Simchas Torah. She has Simcha b'Torah, that's the joy in the Torah. Therefore, the Kivan Shasei the Rubai from the Mailam B'Kodesh, since the order in Yiddishkeit is that we go up in holiness, how they move, and it's understood that Torah is higher than davening, because we're starting off with davening at the beginning of Tishrei, and we're ending with Simchas Torah. And this is the way of the Rebbe. Some people think that the apex and the climax of Tishrei is Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, as it's called. The Rebbe says, but we're always going higher. So therefore, Simchas Torah must be the height of everything. And that's Torah. So the beginning is Tefillah, even Yom Kippur is only Tefillah, and Torah is higher than that. Therefore, the Rebbe concludes the questions. How can we say that the sicha of the servants of the fathers are greater than the Torah of the children? That tefillah is higher than the Torah. Seemingly, tefillah should be secondary to and lesser than Torah. Any questions? Ois hey. So the Rebbe explains this as follows. Chazal said, Abba Binyamin would say, Al Shnei Dvarim Hayisi Mitzdair Kol Yomai. Two things was I put in lots of effort. This was something that pained me, meaning I expended a lot of effort on this. One of them is Al Tfilosi Shetahei Smucha Lemitasi. For my davening, that the davening should be close to my bed, meaning after I rise, I should daven. What does this mean? Before it's explained on Hatam, the reason for why he was so focused on that and it's so interested in this, he didn't even want to study Torah before davening. But to daven immediately. Why is this? Because the advantage of Torah study after davening is much higher, incomparably so, than the Torah prior to davening. Therefore, he wanted that his davening should be close to his bed, meaning should take as soon as he gets up from his bed, he should daven the imlokein. If he doesn't daven as soon as he gets up, then there's no two choices. Either he's davening or he's learning. Because you're not allowed to be free of Torah study even a moment. If he will then sit down to study instead of davening, then he will be lacking the advantage of Torah study that's after davening. So the Rebbe is going to explain now what is the advantage, what is the specialness of Torah study that follows davening, which I already indicated before. That's the approach that the Rebbe is going here in the Maamar, that even though Torah is higher than Tefillah, but that is manifested and expressed by first prefacing it with davening. The idea behind this is the difference between Torah study prior to davening. The Torah study after davening is it's like the difference between betrothal and marriage. In other words, the first step of the marriage, which is the giving of the ring, versus bringing her home or into the yichud room, etc. The inyan ha'erusin who, the first step, the first stage of marriage is she'asar lo al kulei alma kehegdish, that he makes his wife prohibited upon the entire world, like hegdish, something that's devoted to the Beis Hamikdash, is prohibited for mundane use, for ordinary use, for anybody's use. That's why Erusin is also called Kiddushin, as in Masechtas Kiddushin, because, and that's also the reason why we say in the marriage, in the Erusin, we say Hareyat Mikudeshesli, that you are sanctified to me. What's the idea of sanctification? Making holy. Making holy is the separation and removal from everyone else. What does that represent in Avodas Hashem? That the person is separated from worldly matters. But it's not just a negative, what one must be separated from. There's also the idea that she becomes specifically for this man. So there's the negative and the positive. Top of page 203. But there still doesn't come about the actual union, in actuality, where they manifest the union. Shezeu inyan an-nisuyin, because the actual union, that is the nisuyin, the second stage of marriage. V'hoyul basarecha, like I said, they shall become like one flesh. V'ad lo'hiladas banim v'chulu, until they actually give birth to children. Shu inyan gilui koyach ein sof lamata, it's the revelation of the power of the infinite down here below, and the fact that there's children being born, like we have in other Maamar and Mechsudas, because having children is the Ein Sof's way, because it has the infinite way of again repeating itself and going on without a stop. So then he goes on and says, now what does that have to do with what we're talking about? Similar to these two stages of Eidusin and Nisuyin is the difference between Torah study before davening and after davening. Before davening, it's just a state of Eidusin. That the union is not yet in a revealed way. How come? Why is it the union between Hashem and the Yid not in a revealed way? He's learning Torah. Since the godly soul is enclosed in the animal soul. Although the godly souls are part of Hashem above, through its descent and becoming enclosed in the animal soul, the Nefesh Elokis becomes a being, an existence, a separate entity. The bedveik is built in the keres. So therefore, even though it's a part of Hashem above, its cleaving is an unrecognizable cleaving. You don't see on the Nefesh Elokis and on the person that they are completely one with Hashem. You see that they have a connection, but it's a dveikis built in the keres. It's like we said, that as soon as he gives her the ring, she's a rei miyucha to him, but you don't see any type of activity that manifests that. So too when it comes to Torah, the way it's on its own. Before, if it's without the precursor and preface of davening, though it's the wisdom of Hashem, so then the Torah descended down here below in a way of separation. And we know it talks about mundane things and physical things and an ox and a cow and so on. So you could like be unaware of the godliness in Torah. But through tefillah, which is from the word throwing pottery, how you're joining different things together. Meaning tefillah is about joining with Hashem. It's the cleaving and bonding with godliness in a way of arising from below to above. Then it's followed by drawing down from above to below. In Torah study, it's after davening, that should be in a way of a marriage, of a total union. It should be an open union in a revealed cleaving to Hashem. That is only happens in Torah learning when it's preceded by davening. That's why it says specifically that David HaMelech was the one that joined the Torah of above with Hashem. What's the uniqueness about David of all the tzaddikim of all the generations? Ki David hu ne'im zmiris Yisrael, because David is the pleasant singer of Yidden, which is talking about his songs are shezeu not tefillah. That's the idea of davening. Because he has the advantage of davening, he has the kashrus and the connection of Hashem with davening. That causes an elevation in the Torah study, that he can even bond and connect the Torah with Hashem in a way that's not connected beforehand.